Welcome to International Innovation Management 2. Talk about product development processes, new product development processes to be precise. The question is, why do we need these kind of frameworks that go from idea to product launch? The reason is that we need to manage uncertainty, that we need to manage risk. And there's basically three-dimensional uncertainties that will translate into risk, which is technological uncertainty, always the question, will the technology, will what we are planning to do, will it actually work? Market uncertainty, the question is, will the users like it? Are the users receptive to what we're doing? And how will competitors on the marketplace basically react to our innovation? And then the regulatory uncertainty, how will the government react? And so we need these risks to be managed, because as we go along, as we move from idea into the direction of product launch, we invest more and more money. And if the risk wouldn't reduce, if the likelihood that the project will not be successful, if that would not go down in concert with the investment going up, we would have exploding risk. We'll probably see a slide about this later in the screencast. And we look at innovation process frameworks, as I said, going from idea to product launch. And what are the components? What do you need for such a innovation process framework? Well, you need the process, which is a structured kind of process. So you structure activities and tasks, have rules of what happens between certain milestones. And of course, you have milestones where decisions take place. So we're talking about some sort of phase review process, as you will see. And we have two basically different teams that are involved. Let's say there's the review board, so the ones who make the decisions, who provide oversight, who settle problems, set priorities, and basically take care that the infrastructure and the resources are there for the realization team, the second team, to carry out the activities in the new product development process. So basically what they do is they report to the review board. Typically it's cross-functional. We'll see depending on what type of process we're looking at. And the review team basically carries out the activities. In most companies, say the SMEs, the product development process is rather unstructured. Each team defines its own activities. Each team goes about the process by its own terms. We would basically say that we need some structure, as the problems of an unstructured approach, of an unstructured process from idea to product launch is really high. So as I said, purely structured development processes can actually cause a lot of problems. What kind of problems are those? Well, one problem is that there is not a consistent terminology and definitions. So when it is about coordination, people talk about different things. If you pass on a project between different stages, between different functions, etc., you need additional meetings to make sure to clarify what is actually going on if you're not having the same terminology and definitions. When every team goes about the development in its own way, you have basically no way of estimating what type of what size of resources you basically need. Without the resources, you're basically always having the brakes on the planning process and on the execution. And if you do not have a properly structured new development process from idea to launch, then you have a poor understanding of responsibility. Who is responsible for what? That results in problems in communication, duplication of work. Basically, sometimes also the project fails and nobody is responsible. Nobody takes care of looking at the errors and looking at what actually happened. So learning can be hampered by a lack of responsibility as well. And of course, if you don't have a structure, you often lose the big picture, and you always fight the fires that are just burning at the moment. So you're looking at tiny problems, and you put tiny problems before the big picture. So that actually obviously is not good. And now the question is how can we structure an idea to launch type of process? The early phase review processes started in the 40s for large-scale mechanical and chemical engineering projects. And it was basically adapted in the 60s by the NASA to bring a man to the moon. And then when companies thought, oh, there is a process out there that helped us to bring a man to the moon within, a considerable amount of time, then they thought, well, we could use that project, this kind of approach also for our product development. Now, what is a characteristic of these early phase review processes? What they did is they split the innovation process into distinct phases, and the phases were basically the activities, where activities were carried out. After each phase, as I said, there was a management decision whether to continue or what to do with the project, basically. And the innovation process was structured by management decisions. So it went from function to function, from stage to stage, or from phase to phase, to say it in a more precise way in this historical situation. So we go from phase to phase. And this is structured by management decisions. Function by function, very sequential type of approach. And then in the late 80s and the early 90s, Bob Cooper came around with his idea of changing the process, coming up with a different model of the process that basically builds on the phase review process. And he called it the stage gate process. And it's, of course, used by a lot of companies, and it basically systemizes decision making at various stages of the new product development process. And the stage gate, again, as the phase review process, is divided into phases. We call it stages here, where we have activities, and gates where there is the checkpoints, where the review team, the review board basically makes the decisions either to go ahead. This is used for quality management, so you have basically a great handle on the quality that is produced, and for risk management. Now let's look at the stages. If we go from stage to stage, as I already mentioned, from stage to stage you need more resource commitment. So we start maybe with a very low resource commitment in stage 1, increase it to stage 2, increase the resource commitment from 2 to 3 as well, and from 4 to 5 from 3 to 4 as well, and from 4 to 5 as well. Now, Of course, in the diagram down in the slides, you see that I have left out stage 4, and so that you know, sorry about that, but you get the idea. Although the numbering is not really appropriate down there. We have a fair decision making, innovation process gets accelerated. I'll tell you in a minute why we think that is the case, or why there is also empirical evidence that this is the case. It's used as a risk management tool, and it can be used in all sorts of firms and projects, etc. Because what we see later, and what you see in the literature provided through the study guide, and which is available on Elias, you can see that different firms have stage gate processes in different forms and different shapes, with a different amount of gates and different amount of stages. Now let's go into the stages. As I said, the stages are basically the activity stages, and they develop. The stages are there to develop the product and the project further. There is no single R&D stage, no single marketing stage. It is basically parallel. So you have parallel operations. You have a multidisciplinary, multifunctional team working in the stages. So you have the marketing team, the development team, the sales team, basically already included in stage 1, with different sets of activities, granted, but they are already there. And a main part of the activities is to develop the product, but also to collect information. The more you progress in the process, the more information, the more reliable information you need. And this information collection is also carried out because in the gates, where they are the checkpoints for quality management and where the decisions are made, you need information. So the review board or the review team basically needs information to make the decisions, and the decisions are either to go from one stage to the next, kill, then basically the project is abandoned. Hold means that you stall the project for a while and wait for external conditions to change, internal conditions to change. And recycle means that not everything went well in the stage, and you have to recycle the stage, start the stage again, go back to the stage and do a couple of activities that have not been successful, that have not been appropriate enough, etc. And what is really important, what you need in the gates, is that you allocate resources for the next stage. And that is crucial, as it is no way that the review team says, well, in stage 2, in gate 2, okay, we go to stage 2, but there's no resources. That doesn't work. So with the go decision, the allocation of resources has to happen automatically, if you will. The output of the stages are inputs to the gates. As I said, the output of the stages is also information. Information about the progress, information about the market, information about the technical viability, information about the market or commercial viability of the innovations. And criteria for the decisions in the gates could be strategic fit. I said it, I think, over and over again, that strategic fit is really, really important in firms so that you align your product pipeline, your new product development process, and the projects along the strategy. If you run into if a project develops and you figure out, well, it doesn't fit the strategy anymore, why would you possibly want to bring that product to the market? Another set of criteria is about the market. Is there still the market? Is the product still appealing to our customers? Have maybe competitors brought something to the market that is so close to what we're planning, so that we are estimating we'll never get a foothold into the market because our competitor is already there, established brand loyalty, etc., etc. Question is, have problems arisen along the new product development process that challenges the competencies of the firm? Is the risk and the potential return that we get at the end of the day, is it still in balance? So these are kind of questions that you could ask in the gates to evaluate whether to continue or not, whether to go, kill, hold, or recycle. And if we look at a very generic four-stage process, we have stage one is a preliminary concept development. So you identify a need and generate a concept by sort of a specification, and you try to justify already there that it will be economically rational to follow this process. Preliminary concept review, this concept that you develop in stage one, is reviewed with respect to the mission, strategy, capability of the firm, and with respect to the orientation of the market. Is the idea that we have there supported by trends? Is that supported by longer developments, etc.? This is basically to make sure that the concept is distinctive and complementary to what we already have in the organization, that it has a long-term perspective, and that it plays well with it's complementary not only to what the firm already has, but it's complementary to the development in the market. Stage two, design and develop. The design phase can be split basically into two phases, varying by the level of design. Initial design and complete specification. So initial design, you try to sketch out what type of product that is, functional specification, etc. And the complete specification, then you already need what type of, you start constructing already. You define what unique parts you need, what modules you need. You have process plans already in place. And of course the decision of whether after the design and development stage we continue to see whether the design could be used for manufacturing. In the validation stage, validation is, if you will, the process of testing the strategies implied in design to reduce risk and maximize expected benefits. In the review, you review the validation phase and look at whether the product launch is really something that you want to go for. And the fourth stage, in service product support, so whenever you have the product launched and the manufacturing is increased, you have started manufacturing, the numbers you produce are ramped up, the product is monitored as it is, in its existence. The product support review takes place periodically, and it tries to monitor product performance to see whether something has to be changed, minor adjustments have to be made, etc. And if you look at, as I said, it is the stage gate process is very simple, it is very structured, and it can be used in different structures. So Bombardier, in the Philips paper, it has 7 phases. General Electric, in the paper, has 10 phases. So I think Kodak has 4 or 5 phases, the good old Kodak. So it's very flexible, and you can adjust it to the context of your firm, to the industry of your firm, and to the specific needs of your firm. In a pharmaceutical firm, maybe even 10 stages, 10 phases will not suffice to comply with legal regulation. And now a diagram. I will show you that how it actually works with the risk management. So if you look at the financial resources, we said on the right hand, on the horizontal axis, we have time. On the on the vertical axis, we have risk, money, and probability. So if we go from stage to stage, we said we need more resources. So the overall investment in the project increases exponentially, as indicated in the gray line denoted financial resources. Now, if the probability to fail would remain the same when we go from stage 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, then the risk, being the probability to fail times the resources, would increase exponentially as well. What we now need is a process that reduces the probability to fail accordingly, so that the risk remains approximately the same. So you can imagine, if you have a probability to fail developing over time from stage to stage, approximately as the yellow line indicates, then you could imagine that the risk stays about the same, sort of a horizontal line, okay? And the stage gate process, with the information collecting, with the decisions at the gates, will make sure that the probability of failure reduces, as sketched out in the yellow line. Now we have said we need this process, we need a structured process, and we need 2 teams. We need a realization team, and we need a review team, or a review board. The realization team are the ones who are working in the stages. The largest problems or the largest challenges for the review team, for the realization team, is to set up communication that works, that coordination between these different functions in the cross-functional teams, that they are really works, and that internal decision making within the stages really happens. So what you do is you avoid hierarchical structures within the team, you avoid wrong incentives. So successful new product development teams, new realization teams, are cross-functional. they are empowered, they can make some decisions, they can work within the budget that they have. They're well supported by resources. As I said, from one stage to the next, we need more resources. Typically, we said it before. Innovation projects are more likely to succeed if they have a strong product champion or product sponsor, project sponsor. We need that. And they need clear goals and they need visionary management. We said this visionary management kind of style, transformational leadership. This is what we discussed in the winter term. The review board have to have authority and responsibility. So typically you have top management, upper management in the review boards. They're responsible for initiating these projects. They are responsible for canceling that through their decision. In their decisions, they make sure that the projects and the project outcome still fits to the company strategies, and they have and they allocate the resources. As we said, with the go decision, the resources have to come along. So in their specific roles, they have to establish a vision, they have to make decisions, and they have to cultivate the product development process. So the review board has to make sure that across the whole firm, a consistent type of product development process is actually taking place. They make the go or no-go decisions in the stages, in the gates, and they have a vision where the product is going to go with its new products. Cultivating a product development process is the same as down here. So making sure one consistent new product development process in the company. They motivate, so they provide leadership, transformational leadership, hopefully, as we discussed in the winter term. They provide motivations and they provide guidance, if you like. They're responsible for recruiting, so they staff the realization team, and so very, very important role of the review board. Yet you can have biases, you can have some sort of unbalance in these review boards, and that has a strong effect on the overall process, on the overall result of the innovation process. And there's 4 syndromes. We can differentiate 4 syndromes of unbalance. There's autocratic leadership, there is the Big Brother syndrome, functional beauty syndrome, and the ricochet syndrome. Now, autocratic leadership. One member in the review board dominates the whole product development with phrases like "I know best," "do as I command." So this autocratic leadership. That could lead to you start the conceptualization of the product over and over again until you fit this one single strong autocratic leader ideas of how the product can look like. That finally can slow down your development process and lead to being late on the market. If you have the strong leader, this strong autocratic leader who dominates everything, could lead to a late canceling, a late killing of the product, of the process, of the project, and that could lead to excessive waste of resources. And of course, if you have one person who dominates the whole thing, that can frustrate not only the realization team, but that can frustrate the review board as well. So watch out for that. The big brother syndrome is that the management and that the review board gets into low-level decision-making and administration in micromanagement and exerts too rigid control over what is actually going on. That could basically lead on, because that captures quite a lot of resources, that could basically lead to the fact that only a few projects could be managed because the review board runs into a capacity problem. This big brother problem can happen in young companies with highly involved founders, typically with a strong technological expertise. In companies where top management really feels comfortable to engage in every technical detail and try to avoid management issues. It can happen in larger organizations where you have, quite a lot of layers of management, and so management makes itself, creates itself a job by micromanaging projects that shouldn't be micromanaged. And of course, firms with pure communication between managers, between the review board and the realization team. The third syndrome of unbalance is functional beauty or fine wine. That basically means that one function in the firm exerts excessive control over the project. It can happen in engineering-dominated environments where engineering excellence is what is sought for. And so the engineers dominate the whole project, they dominate the whole decision-making process. And marketing, sales often do not know about the final product, how it looks like, until it's really there. So they have to work reactively. Basically, this runs counter to the whole idea of parallel development in the stage gate process. Sometimes when you have this engineering dominated environment, not only marketing suffers, but also manufacturing suffers, because manufacturability is often not an issue, is overlooked. And of course, I don't want to blame it on engineers. That can, the whole thing that you have functional beauty can also happen in strongly marketing driven companies as well. So you have a strongly marketing driven company that wants to, or where marketing and sales want to have every single tiny need of a customer being satisfied, and that you have never-ending feedbacks with engineering and development until every tiny need of the customers are satisfied. And the fourth syndrome, the ricochet syndrome, is again strong functional orientation. So if you have a process, a phase review process, where you basically give the baton of the project from one function to another, you have very fragmented project ownership. One could lose the overall, the big picture. It's hard to plan the whole thing if every function takes care of the project at a certain stage. You can lose the sense of direction if different individuals take hold of the baton and try to stamp their own authority and their own direction on the project. So that wouldn't work as well. Now, if we go back to the stage gate process as such, there could be a current critique. A current critique of the stage gate process is that yet there is some inbuilt feedback loops if we have the recycle decision as some sort of feedback loop, but yet it may be too linear. It's once it's set up, it's extremely rigid, and it's planned too hard to handle innovative projects in a dynamic world, because still it is, you plan from the beginning and you execute the whole project. It is maybe not adaptive enough. It does not really encourage experimentation, so it doesn't encourage quick trial and error type of processes. It is not really context based. If you have an innovation process, you want to have it consistent across the whole firm, but then it is used for all projects regardless of the size of the project. Gates are sometimes too structured, sometimes too financially based, and the system is said to be, or accused to be, really, really bureaucratic. And something should be done about this. And what is done about this? What is done currently? So the processes that have been developed after stage gate, you see in the literature and the study guide. Then there is some agility coming in, and you will find much more flexible, much less bureaucratic processes that are fit for a dynamic environment. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for